We're going to take a quick overview of the last 40 years of redesign, but I do want to note that starting in the 50s and accelerating in the 60s, we really had the birth of the modern comprehensive high school, and it spread nationally. We had things that looked like that Eisenhower era institution built all over the country with that all too familiar institutional hallway of lockers and that footprint that flying over America with the football field and the baseball fields, that became the blueprint for the American high school. And what we're going to talk about today is the 40 years of really trying to mitigate against that big comprehensive high school that Conant made the case for in 1959. I'll point out a couple of highlights along the way. One, Citibank founder Sandy Weil kicked off the National Academy Foundation's 1980. I think of that as the birthplace of modern career academies. And today, NAF is going strong with about 620 career academies across the country. A beautiful echo of that happened in 2009 when the Irvine Foundation launched the Linked Learning Initiative, and districts all over California developed updated career academies, and those organizations that came from that are going strong today, promoting career academies. A Nation at Risk is a modern beginning of the standards movement, which paralleled these reform efforts, in some ways strengthened them, in some ways locked in the old courses and credits and traditional view of assessment. I think the most important work in terms of design principles, when Ted Sizer launched the Coalition of Essential Schools in '84, he really gave us a beautiful way to think about high school as a place where learners learn how to use their minds well, that less is more, student as worker. And then a couple of years after that, Expeditionary Learning issued their 10 design principles, including my favorite one, which is the having of wonderful ideas. A beautiful set of design principles that I think in a lot of respects laid the groundwork for all of the Horizon 2 work done over the last 30 years. Some really notable small schools started in the 90s. Minnesota New Country was the second charter in the country and kind of the beginning of the modern micro school. It's a very cool, small, project-based school. It was a teacher-powered school as well, run by a teacher cooperative. And a couple of years later, Doc and Elliot started the Met in Providence, Rhode Island. I met with this first graduating class in 1999 and still remember what a radical redesign it was of the traditional high school, and with a focus on leaving to learn. It remains one of the most important innovations in high school reform in the last 40 years. 1995, City of New York restructured Julia Richmond from a comprehensive high school to a group of small schools, including Urban Academy. That led to the New York Performance Standards Consortium, an important group of project-based schools that took performance assessment seriously. A couple years later, Urban Assembly, just one of the great networks of schools launched in New York City. You could add New Visions and Outward Bound, Asia Society, the Internationals, really hundreds of very good new small schools in New York City. You could mention that J.C. Broussard was running high schools during the 2000s when Joel Klein put the pedal to the metal on new schools in New York. In 1996, the Napa School District launched Napa New Tech. A couple years later, that became the New Tech Network, a great network, a voluntary network of mostly district schools that committed to project-based learning wall-to-wall. Larry Rosenstock started High Tech High in 2000. That's the godfather of modern project-based learning. A bunch of us are going there next week, really to celebrate that important network that continues to inform practice of thousands of schools around the world. A couple years later, Rebecca and some colleagues started the first competency-based high school in the country, Highland Tech. Rebecca was building on some work from the Chugach School District, really the first competency-based school district. And I don't know, Rebecca, I think of this as the beginning of the modern personalized and competency-based movement. A few years later, a number of states began launching blended learning networks, including Ohio, and that was an early codification of personalized competency-based learning in a high access environment. You could mention Spark NC as a modern version of that, a group of schools in a state working together on a new conception of personalized competency-based learning. We could add Future Learning Council to that, and VaLin, some of our guests today, are the modern versions of state networks working together on personalized competency-based learning. After PTech launched in Brooklyn, that was an echo of the early college effort. A number of important districts won Race to the Top grants: Lindsay in California, St. Vrain in Colorado, and St. Vrain Innovation Center was launched with a lot of inspiration from the Blue Valley Cap Center, shown here in Southwest Kansas City. That opened in 2011, and then a couple years later, it spurred the development of the National CAPS Network that started in 2015 and now has a couple hundred districts participating in this professions-based learning. It also inspired the beginning of the real-world learning movement in Kansas City, where about 90 high schools are working together to incorporate work experiences in entrepreneurship, college credit, and IRCs. We launched our Pathways campaign just a couple years later, and that's a quick overview of a few of the schools and networks that have made a difference. Some of the books that I think about, I selfishly put a couple of our books in here, but Kozel and Delpit and Payne, I think, were early advocates for an equity-based approach. I think these were super important for me as a young superintendent. Paul Hill's work, Reinventing Public Education, I think was a really important system book. I put a couple of Michael Horn's books in there. Disrupting Class was an important reform book. Blended really accelerated a lot of that personalized competency-based work. I included a couple. Tony Wagner has for 30 years been my education mentor, and his new book, Mastery, is the latest and best codification of personalized and competency-based learning. And in that vein, our team's been hard at work for the last 18 months developing our own codification, and Nate and Rebecca are going to tell you more about that.
All right, thanks, Tom. You could probably spend at least a day or two talking about each one of those. So I appreciate that. We need some recording of the longer version for everybody. So thanks. Hello, everybody. Just wanted to set some context because there's been some really great work done over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And even prior to that, there's always innovations happening. And right now, or at least a year ago, thinking about, we have 21,550 approximately public high schools. You add on to that almost 2,000 public charter high schools. So not all charters are obviously high schools. And then 3,600 private high schools. So you're dealing with 25 to 26,000 high schools. And when we think about innovation, there are a certain number that are really thinking about innovation and some that are not for all sorts of reasons. And so we have work to do. And the context matters incredibly. So I did a quick search this morning. I was curious, what was the smallest high school and the largest high school? And both showed up in Texas. There was an enrollment that was a high school of 3 in Texas, and then the enrollment of 3,500 plus also in Texas. And when you think about what does innovation look like and what does school transformation look like at these different types of schools and different locales and different places with different populations, it's all going to be context related. It's all going to depend on what the local situation is. So our fundamental question, and the reason we're hosting this one, is that we know we have work to do. And so how do we increase engagement? How do we increase belonging? And how do we increase outcomes, broader outcomes, so that every high school student thrives? And we know we're not there yet. And we do know that there's hundreds of examples that are happening all across the country on any given day. And there's some amazing work going on, but it's not universal. There's many schools that are still in a more traditional model. Some are more transitional, really thinking about standards and mastery. And then some are really pushing on the transformational side. And so today we're going to talk about 3 different initiatives about high school redesign. And in those high schools, they're on different journeys. Each one of those high schools is in a different place. And just like for young people, we think about personalized learning, we need to think about systems and schools as personalized journeys towards transformation. So Tom alluded to this framework, and this has really come from the years of Tom's work and then Rebecca's work and my work and all the other people in this system that we've talked to over the years. And we tried to build something that was as inclusive as possible, that anybody could hang their hat on, so that when we're talking about school transformation, it's easy to make sense of it. And so we start with always a why, community vision. What is the outcomes, including portraits of graduates and competencies and progressions and standards. The how is always the big meaty part, the learning model itself with design principles and curriculum instruction assessment and what does professional learning look like. The for whom, the signals, and Carnegie's talks a lot about signals. I'll talk about that later. The signals is how are we communicating what those young people have learned and what they can do and what they've accomplished out to the world of employment, the world of enlistment, the world of enrollment in higher ed. And then finally, where is a lot of the work that we thought about in place-based is how do you expand the learning ecosystem? We know that students learn all the time. We know there's great learning experiences out there. So how do we actually think about the where as well? So when we think about the why, what, how, for whom, and where, we find that any group that we partner with, any of the work, there's so many people doing great work in the field, it can all fall into this puzzle. And so we think it's a blueprint, and we like to think about it enacted at the state level or the regional level, but enabled by local assets and driven by regional and local need, and powered, for us, it's important, powered by community level innovation. So thinking about what does it mean to come bottom up rather than top down. So that's the frame that we think about things, and we feel like all the things that Tom mentioned, they all fall into this framework in some way, and they're all on a journey towards helping kids thrive. So today we're joined by some awesome folks that we respect and are just doing incredible work. Brooke Stafford-Brizard at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, Pam Moran and Tina Manglet-Mott from Virginia, who are really spearheading the Virginia Leads Innovation Network and VaLin, and then Angela Wright in Kansas City, Kansas School District, because we've got two Kansas Cities, different states. So all four of these folks are going to talk through 3 different initiatives that are happening in the United States as examples of what is the current state of high school redesign. And again, if you have good examples of great high schools that you want mentioned in the show notes, just put them in here, because we're always searching for great examples. At that point, we're going to hand it off, and Brooke, it's up to you here for Carnegie.
Thanks, Nate. Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Stafford-Brizard. I'm Senior Vice President at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, and thrilled to be here today. Huge gratitude to the Getting Smart team, not just for having us here today, but for all of the influence that they've had on the design of this strategy and theory of change, and helping us find schools and systems for our network, which I'm going to talk about today. In particular, what we're actually building in terms of an agenda to learn from the network to influence national change. We are a 120-year institution. We were founded in 1906 by Andrew Carnegie, so apologies to him for saying his name wrong in our title, which we just do. But we have 2 focus areas in post-secondary and K-12, and they're grounded in our history and kind of the tools that we've brought to the field historically, and how we have to revisit them and rethink the influence they've had, but also how they need to evolve to move our system in the right direction. And in high school, we are focused primarily on the Carnegie Unit, which we brought to the field in 1906 when we were founded as an institution to protect the integrity of teaching and higher education. And so the Carnegie Unit was created as an accounting tool for pension in higher ed. And it was just grabbed and leveraged to scale K-12 and higher education. And it served a very important purpose, but we recognize that conflation of time and learning has calcified so much of what creates that kind of high school today at scale that we know we need to move beyond. Everything from how financial aid is determined to bells ringing. And so we have a vision, and again, have developed this in deep partnership with folks like Getting Smart, for what needs to be in place to move beyond that Carnegie Unit, to move beyond the conflation of time and learning. And that represents a new architecture that rethinks that cycle of standards, curriculum, and assessment, to ground in a broader set of goals, which we actually see in half of our states, probably more than half of our states at this point, who are naming a vision of commencement level success, inclusive of the academic rigor of the diploma and beyond, to name skills and competencies that matter for thriving in workforce and society. learning experiences that are at scale, leveraging the science and rethinking where learning happens and how learning happens in and outside of the classroom, and those signals that Nate mentioned, which are meaningful, actionable, real-time signals of learning against those broader sets of goals. What we know is that that vision of a new architecture, and Tom laid it out, starting in 1959, we go all the way back to 1930 with the 8-year study to reimagine high school and expand the diploma, where there was incredible innovation in high schools across our country, again, 100 years ago. But when philanthropy and technical assistance left, all of that went back to a status quo. And so what we recognize is that the work that we're doing in our Future of High School Network and the R&D agenda that we're activating has to recognize that innovation will fall to a gravitational pull of the status quo if we do not identify the system conditions and structures and culture that allow that innovation to actually root in a system, sustain, and scale. And so I saw a couple of names of folks who contributed to an R&D agenda that basically meets a moment that we name in this set of challenges and opportunities. We feel that, again, 100 years plus of attempts at innovation and transformation of the high school are meeting a moment where it's possible because of all of these challenges that we're facing, and I don't need to read them out for you, but also the opportunity that we see in growing demand for change. That is represented in an R&D agenda, and I want to jump to where we landed. But JT, I saw you join. We had an incredible expert working group. JT from Transcend was part of this to inform how we prioritize what we're studying in this network to really identify how that innovation can root, sustain, and scale. And the expert work group, through the design of surveys and focus groups and engaging with us, helped us land on this set of 8 R&D priorities. Nate spoke to the importance of community. You can't just have the kind of technical change that's going to move the architecture in a system. You have to have that shared vision and decision-making, a culture of trust, the engagement of families. And we are activating this R&D agenda in a network of 24 schools and systems across the country, represented here: red, blue, purple states, rural, urban, suburban districts, because at the end of the day, we want to ensure that the evidence that we're building for not just how the innovation can be implemented, but how it can actually sustain and scale in a system represents the diversity of the systems in our country. And what we want to influence and provide supports around at the end of the day is for our system leaders, right? If you are in a state, when many of our system leaders are right now, that has released the requirement of seat time or has created a new diploma, what you need is the evidence-based guidance at the system level for how to move beyond the Carnegie unit and that conflation of time and learning. So thrilled to be here and offer this as a contribution to the work and learn from all of you.
Thank you so much, Brooke. We'll move on to the Virginia Leads Innovation Network and Pam and Tina to kick us off here. So another big effort, and actually there's some overlap because 2 schools that are in VaLin are also Carnegie schools. So it's fun to see the overlap of initiatives. So Pam or Tina, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tina Mailman, and I am the co-chair of the Virginia Leads Innovation Network, and I'm here with my partner in crime. I like to refer to her as that, Pam Moran. But before I begin, I just want to thank both Tom and Brooke for really speaking to not only the historical context behind the innovative work that has happened in our past, but also what's happening at the macro level. And Nate, you spoke and you're like, there's just so much work to be done. And he's right. But one thing that I take solace in is that there have been many that have come before us and we can learn from that. And 2, we're not in it alone, which thank you to Getting Smart for bringing us all together so we could network and learn together. And with that, I'm going to kick it off to Pam.
Hey, thank you, Tina. And it's exciting to be here today because I'm seeing some folks that I've known for a very long time and some folks that are new to me. And one of the things that I know is when you bring educational entrepreneurs and people who are pioneers and who are willing to take risks together, that's when you can hit the sweet spot and the magic starts to happen in terms of being able to lead for change. And one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit is a little bit of the history of VaLin. But I do have to say, Tom, that when I looked at that timeline of yours, my white hair represents a significant chunk of that timeline. And Brooke, when you threw that picture up of an elementary school, I went, I know that classroom. I think I was there. I feel like that at some level, Chris Emden once referred to me as an OG about the time that I was getting ready to retire. And now I'm a few years past that, but here we all are today. And I feel like that I'm still as passionate about the work that we're trying to do to transform education in this country to respond to the needs of young people today as I've been for my entire career. Hi, Shamika. Thank you. So here we are. And what Tina and I are going to talk a little bit about today is the Virginia Leads Innovation Network. This was established in 2018 when I left the work as a superintendent in Albemarle County, Virginia. I moved into a role as executive director with the Virginia School Consortium for Learning. And one of the things that really jumped out for us very early on when I was working with the group, the VASCL group, are educators around the state saying, what's this new thing, this profile of a Virginia graduate, and what the heck are we supposed to do with it? So I started reaching out and forming partnerships and connections with the Department of Ed, with other organizations. And what we landed on was, how do we build an innovation network, an R&D space where educators from around Virginia could come together and figure out what is it that we need to do to turn this profile of a Virginia graduate into real work grounded in deeper learning, in active engagement, and in equity across the entire state. So that's how we got started in 2018. We launched a cohort early in 2019, and we have been the little engine that could ever since. Tina and I are now co-chairs together, and our goal is that we are paralleling the work of the Carnegie Foundation to really look at how do we reimagine and transform high schools across Virginia. It's lined up with what our General Assembly has really endorsed. It's lined up with work that's going on at the Virginia Department of Education. And most importantly, it's work that lines up with grassroots movement across the entire state to say the schools that we've had have been great schools that have met the needs of kids over time in a different century. But we've got to look at very different ways to be able to shape the work that we do with young people so that when they graduate, to borrow a word from the folks out in Nevada who have their own version of a network that's really going great guns, how do we ensure that our kids have the knowledge and skills that they need to thrive in life in an ever-changing world that's going to continuously throw problems and challenges at them that are non-standard problems, and they've got to be able to work and build non-standard solutions, whether it's in their homes, their communities, or in the workforce. So that's where we started. We are now going into our 6th cohort. And I will tell you that our Levers for Change began in 2018 with the Virginia 5 Cs, our profile for a Virginia graduate. Dr. James Lane was the superintendent at the Department of Education at the time. He said, we've got to take a step into our future. He built that with input from staff and others across the state. But we said, that's not really enough. That's a framework, it's a concept, but it doesn't give us what we need to go deep and really make the transformative changes that we need to go after. We added a layer of competency-based learning and borrowed from America Succeeds, from their durable skills work, put that together. And then our Department of Education said, let's embrace the 3 E's readiness framework that actually helps us think about, as our kids are graduating from high school, how do our kids get prepared so that whether they choose to enroll, to enlist, or to be employed right out of high school, how do we ensure they're ready? We're thrilled that our General Assembly has endorsed the work that Tim Knowles launched at Carnegie by saying that it's time to put an expiration date on the Carnegie unit and seat time, by saying we want our school divisions across Virginia to have maximum flexibility in how they use time and how they build transcripts from the work that kids do, the experiences that they have, not just from kids who can pass state tests and fill seats for the required amount of time for a course in Virginia. We are on the path. We believe that entrepreneurial work effectuation thinking, design thinking, and strategic thinking all have to come together to transform schools. And that's what VaLin's all about, is how do we put this all together and support up using the work of Getting Smart this year to help us get to the next place. Tina, it's all yours.
Thank you, Pam. And I think when we talk about this work, when we're really talking about changing a system and the structures that exist, it is so important to really talk about how we cannot do this alone. You can't do it alone as a district. You can't do it alone, even as a statewide network. You have got to have partners that come on board. And Virginia has been really fortunate that we have a community, almost like this ecosystem for change that exists within our state. We have a whole business community that surrounds the work around change in Virginia, recognizing that our students need these competencies in order to be successful in the workplace. So we partner with Virginia Learns, run by the executive director, Robert Nomberg, and he brings the business community to the table so we can listen and hear what they have to say that helps inform the decisions that we make as educational leaders throughout our state. The Virginia Department of Education, as Pam has stated before, the incubator for the work of VaLin started with the idea of our state superintendent, Dr. James Lane, and the work that they were doing at the education level, the department level, to ensure that they are putting in the right policies in place to support the change that is happening at the grassroots level. And we have a whole statewide education of professional organizations and higher education. So many, it's really hard to name, but I'll name a few, like BASED, William & Mary CERN. We have VASL. We have the Virginia Association of State Superintendents, James Madison University. We have Old Dominion University, George Mason University. So we have a collective group of people that come together. Many sit on our steering committee to inform our work as we move forward. And to just be grateful that this spring, the General Assembly put money, one-time funding that we're hoping to get reoccurring into the state budget in order to support the work of VaLin 6.0. Having said that, I'd like to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about 6.0. So when we came together, there's this national movement, and we looked to Carnegie, Brooke, having Takani in our state, Takani White, and having conversations with her and seeing that there is this national movement that is occurring around really changing and breaking the Carnegie unit and rethinking how we can do high school. So when VaLin came to me 2 years ago, it was 2 years, Pam, I think, in the summer of 24, really started the steering committee, and I and Pam and many others were thinking about, what are we going to focus on this year? What is that main focus, that driver for change? And we recognized that we always ran VaLin in a one-year cycle. And many of us that are in educational leadership recognize that 1 year is just not enough for anything to sustainable to happen. So we were looking at making it a little bit longer than 1 year and honing in on one focus so that when people come together in this network, they are provided coaching on one change. And we decided to focus in on high school redesign. So many of the schools in our network are sitting and looking at how can we rethink flexible learning pathways? How do we think about how CT integration can take place in order to make room for what graduation requirements occur? But how do we align our program of studies and our curriculum to the industry? We know that industry works in an integrated manner. How do we teach in that integrated real world, authentic manner that aligns directly with industry? We're looking at mastery-based learning to ensure that students have the right skills needed in order to advance. And it's not just done in isolation. And that if they don't pass one skill or they don't master one skill, we move on. And we know that just creates holes in the whole educational experience for a child pre-K and beyond high school. We have 4 core components to support every division we call them divisions for those of us who are national right now, but they're districts to you. 4 core components. They receive coaching. We provide ongoing, just in time, personalized professional learning based on what are their current needs. We surround them with a community of practice, and we have in-person convenings. all with this goal that we want to boost student engagement and provide students with readiness for employment, for enlistment, and for enrollment in higher ed. And also saying that we have amazing partners in this work. And we're just so fortunate that Getting Smart has jumped on board with us. And we already see the advantage of having them being a part of the team. They keep me on point all the time. And they add so much to the network just based on their experience alone. So when we talked about that historical context and understanding that this is happening nationally, they're able to open our lens and open the possibilities of what could be in Virginia. And lastly, if I can move on, just to give you an example of one particular district division that we have within the VaLin network this year, which is also part of the Carnegie National Movement. We have Roanoke County Schools, and it is a very small, kind of medium. We have smaller districts in our state, but they serve over 13,000 students that range from kindergarten through high school, and they're nestled in the western part of our state. They have been reimagining the high school experience and what it looks like to integrate those career pathways through a portfolio of events that aligns also to community. So they're not doing this in isolation. We spoke to the need that we have to have partners in this. Their partners are their community and the industry surrounding them. And the students have these real world capstones where they go out into the community and they get to defend those capstones at the end. The interesting thing is the portfolio doesn't start in 12th grade. It doesn't even start in 9th grade. They're actually starting to talk about how it starts and begins in middle school and expands, and they defend that throughout their high school experience. It aligns with their opportunity ready profile, which is on the right, which is their graduate profile, almost like the profile of a graduate for the statewide one. And in VaLin, what they're looking to do is to expand the competency-based model to accelerate student learning and success in post-secondary education and work. Again, we have 13 other divisions that are a part of this network doing all similar but a little different work based on the context of the community. And we're just excited to be a part of this national piece right here, be a part of this webinar right now, this town hall, and be able to connect in a way that we can support these divisions in doing the work that they have a vision for and what they want to accomplish in the next 2 years. So thank you all.
Thanks, Tina and Pam. Awesome description of what's happening in Virginia. And really, this idea that I think we're hearing resonating is how do we, and Carnegie talked about this as well with Brooke, is just this idea of what does R&D look like? And we need to really think about R&D in schools. And we talk a lot about implementation, establishing and implementing a system that already has evidence behind it. But we need to actually think about what does it look like to do R&D? So when you're testing personalized systems, you're testing competency-based, what does that look like when you're testing at a small level? We're going to do a quick pause here. We have a great question. Mike Peck asked, just directed at Brooke, but it could be to anybody. So maybe Brooke, you could take a stab at this, but just how do we provision system leaders with the actionable data and processes to envision and build sustainable change? So we have all these models being built. What's your thought on the scope of what data will come out of these models that will be helpful for leaders to see, and that could be board or superintendents, and the processes that will help them continue to move the ideas forward? Thoughts on that, Brooke?
Many thoughts. Thanks, Nate. First, I think we're looking at models within systems because we have to identify both kind of what effective implementation and looks like for the models and what system conditions need to be in place to support those models to sustain and scale. So the R&D priorities that you see are thinking about what evidence we need to build to not just support effective implementation, but sustainability at the system level. We also are thinking very carefully about what evidence we are building. We are deeply connected to the research community and the academic community, and our R&D agenda is going to hold all of the academic integrity that we know is critical. And we are turning to our state and local policymakers and decision makers to ask them, what do you need the evidence to look like to ensure you can make actionable decisions when it comes to policy and resource allocation? And so it's a deep partnership from the start to ensure that what we are building in terms of evidence is in service to the practitioners and policymakers that will make the change happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we go to Angela, I want to ask one more question. This came from Michelle Cahill, directed towards VaLin, but again, anybody who wants to answer it. So In VaLin, how do you integrate foundational knowledge needed for college readiness with durable skills development? So there's this tension that's showing up anywhere, all over the place, where we know that ELA and math are getting measured. We know that those are headlining, saying those things are decreasing, yet we're bringing in these transformational models. I think the real challenge and interesting innovation is how are these things being integrated? So Tina or Pam, examples of that in or outside of VaLin in Virginia?
Well, I'll start with that. If you haven't seen multiple choice, and I see Josh Ruppin and Mel Chang on here, both of who are with What School Could Be, you want to definitely take a look at that, because I think that Winchester City Schools, and they are not a current VaLin team, but they have really built over time a model where all kids are expected to become both college and workforce ready, so that when they graduate, that they have a range of opportunities and choices and pathways to pursue. So I think that one of the things that we have to think about, and I've oftentimes said this as a superintendent, that the very competencies that kids need to be successful academically are also skills that they need in the workforce, they need in their communities as community contributors, and even to have healthy, thriving home environments. And so one of the things that I believe is that when you go after an identification of highly important durable skills and competencies, that those are as applicable in a student who's maybe going to end up going into college right out of high school, or they're going to go into the workforce perhaps with certification or licenses already in place, or they're maybe going to take a gap year. But that building with educators and understanding that there's not an academic path that is totally separate from a career pathway, and that we have to be able to bring those together to really maximize the resources of our teachers, and to have our kids understand it's not either I'm going to go into a job where I'm going to be coding right out of high school, or I'm going to go to college and get a computer science degree. That the skill sets should be something that we can build and find value across the continuum of ways that we want our high school students to be ready to transition into adulthood. I will never forget when the former president of the University of Virginia said to me one time that the kids graduating from high school that drop out or go back home from the University of Virginia as first-year students are not going back because they lack academic skill sets. They're going back because they do not have the competencies to be able to be self-determined individuals as they go into college. In my mind, our last 2 years of high school, and many of our schools that are in VaLin are thinking about this. How do we help our schools understand that the last 2 years of high school are absolutely a time for kids to make a transition out into life through the experiential kind of learning opportunities that we can make available by partnering better with our communities and with our business partners. So that would be one way to conceptualize that. Hopefully that helps.
Tina, briefly, and then we'll
just
go over to
piggyback.
Angela.
Yeah, I think that what I'm seeing is like people are like, concretely, how do you do this? And when you're talking like this, I couldn't speak work that Roanoke County is doing and the work that Stafford is currently doing within our thing. They have the competency spelled out pre-K or K through 12. What does it look like for a durable skill in an English class if you're working on communication? And they're spelling that out in a framework rubric system. Now they want to embed that work into the curriculum, into their program of studies. So while I'm in English, while I'm learning reading in grades 5, how do these competencies align, and then how do they build and matriculate vertically? So there are divisions within our network currently doing this work. And once they're done, we hope to have this published and available. But right now they do have the rubrics and the frameworks for the competencies spelled out grades K through 12. I hope that helps concretely with
absolutely. And there's
questions.
A bunch of resources that are getting put into the chat as well. We call those progressions, right? So if you have a set of competencies, it's not enough to be a poster on the wall. It's got to have a set of continuum, a progression of what are the indicators that sit parallel to, or and like B21 from Philadelphia, their networks, they're all integrated together. Standards are integrated with competencies. All right, we need to take a trip to Kansas City, everybody. Angela, take it away. We're excited to hear what's going on in Kansas City.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Wright, and I am excited to share with you what's going on in Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools as we think about the high school redesign. Just listening to all of you guys, I just want to share that you're so right. We cannot no longer wait until students get into high school to start guiding them on a pathway. In KCK, back in 2014, our superintendent then, Dr. Cindy Lane, she had a vision and she made a promise. She made a promise to our students that she wanted to make sure that every student graduate with a diploma plus endorsement, that they leave high school ready for college and career, and that at every level that they're on track and ready for success. And so in doing that, we set some goals. And that goal was, one of our North Star goals is to make sure that 100% of our students that graduate with that diploma plus endorsement by 2031. And I can say right now, we are at 84% of our students who are seniors who are graduating with that endorsement. And so we want to make sure that continues, that we're going to meet that goal. But we can't wait until they start high school. We have a continuum, and it starts at pre-K through 5. Doing pre-K through 5, we try to lift that awareness of exposing our students as early childhood to opportunities, such as our 5th graders are taking college tours. Our students, all of our students in elementary, they are connected to the connector. The connector is a platform that we use as we teaching our students around careers and opportunities and providing those experiences to them. We connect them to the connector. So for example, if I'm interested in engineering, if I'm learning engineering in my content in a classroom, then I'm going to have a connector experience where that engineer is going to come in and talk to students about what does engineering look like in the real world. So we have to help build that awareness as early childhood in 5th grade. Then when students move on to middle school, we want them to explore. Through the support of our partners of Prep KC, we have what you call career jumping, job shadowing. Our students go through JA BizTown. They have college visits. We use Zello, the platform, for our students to really start thinking about what careers or things they're interested in. And we have middle school liaisons who they take that information, they take that data, and they take those students who are sharing their interests through Zello, and they try to provide opportunities where our students can go into those spaces, into the community, into the metropolitan area, and see what that job looks like in real life. You have speakers come in, we do like internships, but we also do externships where our teachers are also getting that experience, where we're walking into their spaces, asking what do we need to teach to better prepare our students. So when they leave us, whether they're going to go to college, enlist in the military, or go straight into the workforce, we want our students to be ready. And being ready, I know our State Board of Commission, Randy Watson, he made this statement way back in 2015. He said that he wanted Kansas to lead the way in education, that our students need to be successful. And part of being successful, he felt that academic and cognitive preparation needs to be in place. Our students need to have technical and employability skills, and they need to know how to have that engagement, that civil engagement. So with those visions, we move into high school. When students get into high school, we want them to already have that path already laid out of where they want to go and what they want to do. And so in high school in Kansas City, Kansas, we do offer dual credit programs. Our students experience a lot of work-based learning experiences with our partner of Kaufman, CAP, Kansas City, Kansas Community College, and Prep KC. They ensure that our students, they help us ensure that our students have those experiences. This past year, last year, we had 15 of our students who graduated with an associate's degree. We had over 300 students graduated with a certification. And a lot of those kids went on and moved on to college. Some of them went straight into the workforce, and some of them extended their education. But at high school, we really introduced them to dual credit, work-based learning experience, whether they're doing internships, client-connected projects, whether they're doing social change projects, all of that. We talk to them about technical education and special programs. We have our students with disabilities. They are doing internships right now at KU Medical Center. We have students who's in a health pathway. They're doing internships at KU as well. We have students who are in automotive. For example, our students go to Kansas City, Kansas Community College to participate in technical education. And because we share that college with the community and for the districts, we have limited slots. So when those slots are limited, say if I have 10 kids who really want to go into automotive, but our district only have 5 slots, then we have to go into the community to make sure that our students, we go into the community and find partners to make sure that our students still have those opportunities. For example, we have students who are working at Baxter Auto. They are getting certifications A, B, and C, but they're also getting the on-the-job training and they're getting paid to do. And so when we have limited numbers with our technical center, then we go out into the fields and we try to find those opportunities. So we have our students placed in the teaching pathway, in the medical pathway. We just really try to really get them going. So that's a little bit about what we do. We try to align everything with our individual plan of study. So all of our students, we want them to graduate with an individual plan of study. It starts, and I think Tina or Pam say this, you can't wait until they get into high school. We start the individual plan of study in middle school. And so we get them aware. We have that awareness in elementary where we bring in so many different opportunities to our students so they start thinking about careers and what they want to do when they grow up. We bring partners in to talk to them. We take them out so they can see these things in real life. In middle school, we explore more. But in high school, we want them to be prepared and we want them to start applying those skills. So all of our students graduate with an individual plan of study. That individual plan of study, it gives it tells a journey of their schooling from middle school up. In that, they share a portfolio, they will share their resume, they will share what type of credentials they have. A lot of our kids get OSHA 10, OSHA 30, whatever credential they're getting, they will share that. Whatever endorsements they receive, they will share that. Just making sure that they're ready for the real world. We definitely try to make sure that all of our students experience that work-based learning experience, whether it's an internship, a client-connected project, and all of this is aligned to our portrait of a graduate. Our portrait of a graduate, we Kansas City, Kansas, we are developing our portrait of a graduate. Right now, we have already identified the attributes, but now we are ready to launch and implement. And before we do that, we want to make sure that those critical attributes that we identified that we want all of our students to know and be able to do, we want to make sure that our teachers understand what they are. So in order for me to teach critical thinking to my students, I have to make sure that my students, that my teachers and the educators really know what critical thinking is. What are those actions and those behaviors? So when they are sharing the portrait of a graduate and really making sure that students are learning those skill sets, that the teachers have a deep understanding of it. So we are in the process of launching our portrait of a graduate in January. It's like I said, we have our attributes. Our students are creating our visual representation of it through our graphic design and animation class. And then we are going to launch it in January, where we're giving our teachers at least 2 quarters to really teach those skills that's in the portrait of a graduate as they embed it into the GVC.
Angela, because we're getting close to the hour. I think there's a critical question here that I'm curious about, and I think I've seen alluded to it in the chat, is how are the learners responding to this? So do you have a sense that they're saying, yes, community connected challenges, or there's so much good work going on in Kansas City, but I'm curious about, you can finish up our town hall by saying, what are the learners saying? Do you have a sense of that? Are they excited about it? Are the numbers growing? Those kind of things.
The numbers are growing, and when we connected with Kaufman and when we have to share the MBAs and the IRCs that our students have gained, we always give our students feedback and surveys to give us feedback so we can better our programming. And what the kids are saying and their parents are saying is that they appreciate the fact that school is redesigned in a different way, where you not only just have your core, but my students have an opportunity to, my children have an opportunity to really learn a skill set that they're interested in, and they can start in middle school and high school and carry it on into post-secondary. So right now, we're having positive feedback from our students. We do track our students 2 years out of high school, and we always asking them, did we prepare you for the real world? What can we do better in our programming to make it better for you? And so we do those surveys.
That's awesome.
We get them in December and we get them in May. Like I said, we follow our students, our graduates, for 2 years, and they will let us know if we didn't do a really good job. We try to tighten up in those areas.
Yeah,
but what
awesome.
we're hearing from our parents and from our students, that we're on track. Are we perfect? No. There's some alignment that we need to do, but there's also, like someone said earlier, our systems have to be in place to make sure that this work is sustainable and that it continues to last, because we're seeing great results. It's not the quality of how many MBAs, it's the quantity of can that student leave us, go into the workforce or go into college or the military and be successful at the level that they need to be?
And it all goes back to, thank you, Angela. That's exactly what I was interested in hearing. And this idea of just, are students thriving? Do they have financial stability? Are they able to contribute? Are they able to, et cetera, et cetera? And Angela, Brooke, Tina, Pam, thank you so much. Tom, for your preamble on high school redesign. We have done a lot of great work over the last 50 years. There's amazing things going on right now, and we have a lot of work to do. And it's because of all of you on the town hall today and all of our great speakers today that this is happening, so that we can have more students be engaged, more students reach better outcomes, and more students feel like they belong, because that's ultimately our goal, right? And that'll make the world a better place. So thanks, everybody.